Good evening. I'm Steve Fox from Border City Financial. It's Thursday night, and welcome to our video podcast. I think that's what I'm calling it now. I am really thrilled to have Rebecca Martyn on tonight because this is, again, something I don't really know a whole lot about. And she has a very unique expertise and history, and we're going to hear about that in just a minute. But I think this is something that if you're watching this, you may be very interested in. But even if you know someone that should be connected to her firm, this is a great opportunity to be able to refer somebody to a place that you can be comfortable in getting some assistance. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump in and introduce Rebecca. And first of all, if you would just take a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit about what your history is. How did you head down this road? How did you end up doing what you're doing? And then tell us a little bit about what your expertise is, and then we'll start to unpack that.
Okay, sure. First of all, Steve, thanks for having me. And as you mentioned, my name is Rebecca Martyn. I am a licensed insolvency trustee with Hoyes Michaelos, and I've been a licensed insolvency trustee for 17 years. Been in the industry a little bit longer than that. I am also a CGA CPA, and I got into this business actually when I applied for a job at a big accounting firm in London. And didn't get the auditing job that I had applied for, but then I was given the opportunity to work in the insolvency department. So took that opportunity, and as I progressed through my accounting designation, then also became, did all the coursework to become a licensed insolvency trustee. Finished that in 2003, actually moved to Windsor in 2000. And once I got my designation to be a licensed insolvency trustee, I then joined Hoyes Michaelos. And Hoyes Michaelos is a firm of, I think we have 19 offices all across Ontario. Here in Windsor, we're at 1214 Ottawa, the corner of Ottawa and Peary. And pre-COVID, we would meet with people on a regular basis just to talk to them about their debt situation and see how we could help them resolve it.
I want to just put this up quickly on the screen, and I'm going to have information available on the screen at the end of this today, just so that people know how to contact you or how to contact your office. But one of the things that I really don't understand well, and I would love for you to speak to, is sort of what is your target market? What if somebody hears that you're an insolvency trustee, maybe you can unpack that a little bit in lay terms for people to understand what the circumstances are that they might be in if they would be in need of your services.
Really what it comes down to, the kind of the bankruptcy insolvency textbook definition of insolvency, you owe more than you have. And really it's a case where you can't pay your debts as they become due. So the trigger for most people is they all of a sudden realize that, okay, I'm having a hard time making this credit card payment, or I'm taking from one credit card to pay the other credit card. Or all of a sudden now, because of that, I'm behind on my rent, and I'm now having to go to a subprime lender to get money. So that's really the big trigger, is when they realize that, okay, I don't have enough money to handle all my bills. At that point, that's really when it's ideal to reach out to someone like me. Talking to us is free. It doesn't mean you're doing anything. It's just talk to us. Right now, due to COVID, everything is online. So it'll be a webinar or a web meeting or phone or email, just to tell me what's going on, what are the stressors that you're dealing with, and then we'll see if, well, not see, we'll try to figure out some sort of plan to help you get out of it, whether it's a bankruptcy or proposal or something else.
That's very helpful. I don't know the exact statistics, but there is a significant percentage of the Canadian population that is literally living paycheck to paycheck at this point in time. You probably know the statistics.
Yes, no, we've done those studies.
You probably know the statistics far better than I do. So that part seems really scary to me. So then along comes COVID, and the governments step in and they create programs to provide some financial relief to people along the way for those who suddenly find themselves out of work. And so I've had a couple of like off the cuff conversations with people during this period of time where people said to me, just on the course of conversation, yeah, well, I'm getting CERB, right? I'm getting some income coming in during this period of time. And just, I'm not sure why I respond this way, but I'm like, you know that's taxable, right? Like you know that you're going, and there's no tax withheld like it would have been off your paycheck. So, and there, I can tell because their eyes start to get really big and they're like, I got to pay tax on this. Like, where is that money going to come from? Because I was getting $2,000 a month and I spent the money to live. So when I think about the percentage of the population of people that are in this position, especially during this period of time where we had a significant time where a lot of people were out of work, maybe you can talk a little bit to sort of where you see us at as Canadians and what the risks are for people and how important that may result in what you do.
Well, you're right. And that's really interesting. And if we go back to 2019, insolvencies for 2019 were at a record high. And then we look at January. January was 17% higher than it was in January 2019. February 2020 was 16% higher than it was February 2019. March was just about even. And I believe it was around March 17th that things then started getting shut down. And it was really interesting, the calls that happened after we kind of transitioned to working from home and not seeing clients in the office anymore. The people that called understandably were stressed. And no one knew what was going on, right? And so it's a case of, okay, let's just talk through your program, talk through the problem right now. And, the first thing is, the government's asked the banks to kind of pull back on the collection. So, okay, yeah, your credit card bills due next week, but you know what? That's not your priority. Let's just wait and see. We don't know anything about the benefit yet. Let's just wait and see what the benefit is, because right now your priority is your rent. Okay, you have a mortgage instead? Well, talk to your lender about a mortgage deferral, because right now it's a case of let's focus on what's important. We'll deal with your debt at some other point. Right now, let's make sure you have enough money for your living expenses, your groceries, your utilities, all the things that really matter. We'll deal with the debt at some other point. And then what we saw kind of Ontario-wise, April, May, and June, insolvency filings have been down anywhere from 26 to 40, 50%, depending on where you, oh, perfect, thank you. So insolvency have really gone down. Now that things are starting to open back up, we're going to start to see the numbers slowly creeping back up, because there's so many factors involved. If it was a case where, there was a perfect vaccine developed tomorrow, everyone's back to work, October 15th, we might see this massive spike, because all of a sudden now people are back to work, courts are reopened, and now there's a risk of being garnished. Highly unlikely that's going to happen. So what I imagine what we're going to start seeing is a slow increase as more collectors start getting back online. The government is now starting to collect on their debt. And actually, I was speaking with someone this morning. I won't name the bank, but has a line of credit with a bank. Everything's been fine. They've exited the deferral process. That's all done. And now all of a sudden, the bank is so aggressive on their collection activity. So she calls up in a panic, what can I do? What can I do? So we kind of work through her problems. And in her situation, just based on her income, other things going on in her life, she'll be back, likely next week doing a consumer proposal to take care of that debt, because she can't risk being garnished. And that's what the bank's threatening to do now, because courts are slowly reopening. So that's going to now push people to make some decision and figure what they need to do about their debt.
So this brings up the next great question, because I have a little bit of understanding about this, but I know lots of people who don't. So I want to make sure that people are really clear on exactly what this is and how it works. Claiming bankruptcy, maybe if you can talk about what happens in a bankruptcy and sort of what the end result is with people and their debt as compared with a consumer proposal.
Sure.
Because I think this is an area that's really fuzzy to a lot of people.
You're right. And a lot of people have heard about bankruptcies, and not a lot of people have heard about consumer proposals. And proposals have been around since 92. So they're not really that new, except they're starting to gain popularity. Probably 2/3 of what I do, it's not bankruptcies, it's consumer proposal. So what a bankruptcy really means is that you're telling your creditors you're unable to pay your debt. So any assets that you have that have cash value, you're basically surrendering to the trustee. So it's surrendering to me. I would then sell them and give that money to your creditors. Practically speaking, if someone has assets, they're not doing a bankruptcy. Let's say you had 10,000 in GICs, 30,000 in debt. You don't want me cashing out your GICs. What you're going to want to do instead is offer your creditors some sort of deal so that you can keep your GICs, but deal with your debt on your own. So what happens in a bankruptcy is the way it works is there's kind of multiple sets of rules depending on your income and if you filed bankruptcy before. So for instance, a single person, and the government sets all these rules, the government says a single person can live on $2,200. If you make less than that, you're in bankruptcy 9 months. And that just means during that 9-month period, you have a bunch of obligations you have to do, like paperwork stuff and meeting stuff. You do your duties, 9 months later, you're out of your bankruptcy. At that point, it means your debts are gone. There's certain debts that don't go away. Student loans that are recent, fines, child support, they don't go away. But credit card debt, lines of credit, payday loans, they go away. And if your income is higher than that, your bankruptcy lasts longer. If you've been in bankruptcy once before, then your bankruptcy is either 2 years or 3 years. And there are some people that, circumstances happen. They're in bankruptcy a third time or more. Well, now it's up to the court to determine whether or not not whether they're going to get discharged, but what the conditions are going to be to get out of your bankruptcy. And it's that discharge that is really important, because at that point, you're now debt-free. While you're in bankruptcy, things are just kind of in limbo. And so bankruptcies are really best for people who have more modest income and have no assets. Because again, you file bankruptcy, you're going to lose control over some of your assets. There are things you can keep. Like if you have an old car worth $5,000, you're not going to lose that car if you go bankrupt. You have a house with $50,000 in equity, well, that's an issue in a bankruptcy. So we talk about other options. And then we look at consumer proposal. A consumer proposal, you're essentially offering your creditors a deal to settle the debt. And then we look at several factors. Well, when we look at, okay, what's your budget? What can you afford to pay? We also look at what's reasonable. You might have the best of intentions to pay your debt, but if you can only pay, 2-3 cents on the dollar, does that really make sense? I mean, great that you want to pay something back, but again, it's about that fresh start. And then we also look at, okay, what are your assets? So you have a house, you have $10,000 in equity. Actually, let's say $15,000 in equity, and you have $30,000 in debt. Well, so then maybe we go to creditors and say, okay, person doesn't want to go bankrupt, so they're going to offer you that $15,000, but they're going to pay it over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, to a maximum of 5 years. And the creditors will look at it, and then they'll come back to us and let us know, yep, that's a good deal, we'll agree to it. Or no, we think they can afford to pay a little bit more because of their budget or their income or their expenses or whatever the case may be. So there's a little bit of negotiation that goes back and forth. And the money comes to us, we hold it in a trust account, keep it safe, and then we pay the creditors. And then at the end, it's all satisfied, they're debt-free.
That's actually extremely helpful information.
Oh, good.
There's just as you were talking, there's like a bunch of different things that are coming to mind. So I'm going to try and collect my thoughts and see if we can get through these, because they're questions in my mind, so they may be questions in other people's minds. there's lots of talk about what happens to your credit record and how important that may be. So between claiming bankruptcy and a consumer proposal, what are the differences, if anything, that ends up happening to your credit worthiness that could affect your ability to borrow any money in the future after this?
And that is a great question. And my first comment always to the clients is, well, what is your credit rating now? Okay, you have stuff in collection, you have a judgment. Your credit rating isn't good now. So let's focus more on that fresh start, and let's focus on what this is going to do to your credit rating right now. Of course, a bankruptcy is going to have a negative effect. The ratings go from an R1, which is the best, to an R9, which is the worst. If you have a judgment against you, you already have an R9. Bankruptcy is going to keep it an R9. But then there's ways that during the night, let's assume you're a 9-month bankruptcy. There's ways in that 9 months to start rebuilding your credit. Get yourself a secured credit card. There's multiple institutions that will do a secured credit card. So you charge, you pay it off, charge, pay it off. Then when you're done your bankruptcy, apply for another credit card. And we're talking like small limits, $500. Charge, paid off. That sort of stuff is going to help you rebuild your credit right away. And then when you need something bigger, like a car loan, you're going to have that established credit, which is good. And the bankruptcy will stay on your record. So first time bankruptcy, it'll be on your record for 6 years after your discharge. So 6 years, 9 months, let's call it 7 years. Proposal gives you a moderately better effect on your credit rating. It gives you an R7, and it is on your record for either 3 years after it's paid off or 6 years from when it was filed, whichever happens first. And same thing, during the proposal, get yourself a secured credit card, $500,000, charge, paid off, charge, paid off. That way, when your proposal's done, you have that proposal still on your credit report, maybe for another year, but you've already had reestablished credit. Lenders are going to look at you a little bit more favorably. And the big thing too is, and you should be doing this regardless of doing a bankruptcy or proposal, once a year, get a copy of your Equifax, get a copy of your TransUnion. It's free. TransUnion you can do online. Equifax you have to mail away for. A couple banks even have it for free on their app through either TransUnion or Equifax, and stick to those two. Those are the two main credit reporting agencies. Get a copy. If there's errors, they both have dispute resolution processes. Just follow them to correct errors. I know when I ordered a copy of my report, they had my name wrong. I spelled Martin with a Y. They had AKA Martin with an I. I have never been Martin, AKA with an I. Sent them my documentation. They fixed my credit report. But then it realized, okay, now I understand why I'm getting all this junk mail addressed to Rebecca Martyn with an I, because someone has purchased my name from the credit bureau.
Wow.
Yep.
So so many questions keep coming to mind. If someone then gets a credit report, how do they navigate their way through that? How do you decipher, if you've never looked at one before, how do you decipher what a credit report should look like, or how to interpret the information that's on there? How does somebody who's never done that before go about that?
And you're right, they are pretty confusing, but when you go to either Equifax or TransUnion website, they do have FAQ sites, and they have kind of sample credit reports. And even on our website at hoist.com, we have sample credit reports, so you can understand the lines, understand the codes. But the big thing you're looking for is, okay, who's the creditor? What's the amount that's listed? And is the amount correct? And do they have anything listed as being overdue? And if there's items that are listed overdue, but they're not really overdue, I would say first thing is go back to the lender. Maybe it was a coding error. And especially with all this, with COVID, lenders were supposed to add a special code saying it was under deferral. But, things take time to upload. So just contact the lender and say, hey, you have me as being 60 days overdue. I have my receipt here that showed I paid it on, day 29. Can you please update it? And they will. If they don't, well, then you go through dispute process with TransUnion or Equifax.
Interesting. So if someone either claims bankruptcy or goes through a consumer proposal, for the period of time that is on their record, How does this affect their credit worthiness? Does it mean that they're going to have real challenges borrowing money for anything? Or does it mean that they're going to be paying higher interest rates because they're a different type of risk? How does that translate in real life during that period of time?
Well, I mean, it depends on what they're looking for. If they're looking for a credit card of, $500, there's certain lenders out there that have no issue giving you a credit card for $500, and they'll charge you the same 29% interest rate that they would charge anyone walking off the street. If you're looking for something, you're hoping to get discharged and the next day buy a house, realistically, it's not going to happen. Realistically, it wouldn't even happen without the bankruptcy because, if you're buying a $200,000 house, chances are if you had $40,000 saved up, you wouldn't be filing bankruptcy anyway, right? So again, it's this big picture thing that CMHC will back you as long as you're out of either your proposal or your bankruptcy by at least 2 years. You go in 2 years, 360 days, you're going to get rejected. It's just automatic, system rejects you. You wait till 2 years and a bit, and you have the required down payment to get bank approval, then CMHC will back you for a mortgage. So it's not the life sentence that some people think it is. Yeah, there's going to be some work rebuilding your credit, but it's also a lot of work to get in the negative situation in the first place. And just a matter of taking the necessary steps.
Well, this is a sort of my observation is that we tend to live, especially in North America, in a world of instant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not about it just instant. It's this gratification where we kind of walk by something or drive by something and we see it and we want it, and then we try to figure out a way to get it. and in my financial planning practice, I tell people that the best things in life are deferred gratification, right? Where we actually hope for something and build it towards something. And ideally, we're going to have cash to pay for those things. Mm-hmm. So when I talk to people like that, they say, well, yeah, that's good for you, but that's not the real world. And of course, everything marketing comes to us in a fashion of, you can have this today.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
Right. And this is what you want. So I totally understand how people get caught up in that. When maybe you have some advice for people about sort of not the triggers, but the events to watch for in how they deal with their finances on an ongoing basis that says, a little red flag. Oh, I'm heading down the wrong path. Right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because money mismanagement does happen. I mean, it's just the reality. Like you say, the want sometimes is greater than the need. And, you decide that, okay, I don't know, my kids need the new, whatever latest designer shoe is because everyone else has them too.
Of course.
The shoe off the discount store, isn't good enough for my child. Right.
Right.
But surprisingly, that's not everyone. That's maybe 60% of the people that we see. It's just a case where, it was just always want and money management. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people that we see, it's job loss. I mean, we're going to see that a lot more when insolvencies pick up because some industries have just disappeared, or not disappeared, but they're just not there the same. I mean, if the restaurant's at 10% capacity, you don't need 100% of the servers.
Correct.
Or some of the entertainment,
right.
Concerts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is job loss. A huge factor is marital separation, right? So husband and wife are together, everything's fine. They separate. Well, a lot of married couples have joint debt. They have the house together, but one person doesn't want the house anymore. And let's just assume it's the wife that's still living in the house and she doesn't have the income to support it on her own. Plus they had a joint line of credit. Plus they had a couple joint credit cards. Well, let's say husband decides to go bankrupt. Wife is left with all this debt. So she can't pay it with her income. So now what do you do, right? Maybe you do bankruptcy. Maybe you do a proposal. So there's so many different things that can happen to an individual to cause the stress. Money management, yes, and you're right. And part of it goes to the education, and so parents, teaching their children. How often does your child say, "Okay, can you buy me this?" And you always say yes. Well, how about, well, okay, first of all, and I have this with my son. Okay, you want that? How much money have you saved up from your birthday money, your Christmas money, your allowance money? Or okay, you want it, and
this is the price he has to pay for having a mom who works in this job.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, let's say it's something he wants as $20. Right. It's like, okay, well, what chores can you do to earn that $20? It's fall. Hey, guess what? There's a rake. There's the yard waste bags. There are leaves. Have at it. You work on that for 2 days, or however long, you get some extra allowance money. So it's up to the parents to instill in their kids that you have to earn. And I think it was a case too, where my son was asking for something. Oh, well, there was some sort of app online he wanted, and he thought it was free, and it's $10. It's like, okay, are you going to pay for this? He's like, no, I'm not going to pay $10 for this app. I thought it was free. It's like, good. You're kind of learning that, okay, if you have $10 to spend that you can spend on this app to do whatever silly game you wanted to do, or you can save that $10 and, probably for him buy some hockey cards. Well, you'd probably rather have the hockey cards than the silly app you're probably going to look at once, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just the education. So, I mean, it's really good that there's a financial literacy component in high school now, just because people need to understand what the cost is. And again, look at, okay, maybe I have my first job out of high school. Here's how much I'm making. Okay. And first thing, how much is the government going to take for tax and EI and CPP? How much is my rent going to be? Am I going to be living alone? Am I going to have a roommate? Okay, I need transportation. Do I really need to buy that brand spanking new truck that's $900 a month? Or can I get by with a little car that's, maybe $300 a month? Or maybe I can buy a used car or something, as opposed to, and let's work up to it, because, it takes time. Your parents didn't just all of a sudden, wake up and have this house and have these new cars. They built it up over, 5, 10, 15 years. So just, ease into it, save up your money, get what you need now to get by, to get to work. And, if it means taking the bus, you're taking the bus or biking. I mean, that's the one good thing about Windsor. Our bike season extends pretty long. And you even still see people biking in, December 29th, going to work in the snow. And assuming we ever have snow, right? That's the great thing about Windsor is you can walk, you can bike, you can ride share, and just look at whatever ways you can manage so that, okay, here's my budget. I'm bringing home, say, $3,000 a month. Okay, let's see if I can figure out, saving some money for the future. All my living expenses, maybe a little bit of money for fun, and save up for whatever those big purchases are down the road.
So I have a question, and this relates to what you do, because we've covered a lot of different areas, and all of this is honestly very enlightening. It's fascinating. But if somebody comes in and they are in financial trouble and they're looking for help from you, if the circumstances are that it's just money management, how much time or in the service that you provide, what do you give, if any, in those money management skills that helps people not to end up back in your office again?
Well, on our website, we have some really, really good budgeting spreadsheets. So when I'm talking to someone and they tell me their income, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't seem to make sense. Okay, tell me where you're spending your money. And then when it becomes clear that, okay, it's just a case where, again, maybe not during COVID, but I've had clients where they're constantly eating out. They just refuse to cook. It's like, okay, that's great. But if you're spending, $50 a meal going out because you don't want to cook, think about what that's doing to the long term. St. Clair College has some great cooking classes. Take some cooking classes. It's going to be a social activity. You're going to learn how to cook. You're going to save some money that way, right? So it's just a matter of, seeing kind of what fits for their situation. And so, I'll spend as much time as I need with them. And it's a case of, okay, let's go through line by line where you're spending your money. And if it's a case where, I really think you do need some good, solid credit counseling coaching, There used to be a really good nonprofit in Windsor, Financial Fitness Windsor. They've now merged with Credit Canada. So you just contact the local office of Credit Canada and they can help work with you and develop a budget. And we also have great YouTube videos as well, talking about how to manage your money. I mean, something as simple as, you don't have to pay your rent once a month, or you have to pay it once a month, but you don't have to just save it, do it all at once. Let's say you're paid every week, your rent's $800, let's say, and you're paid every week. Have a rent bank account, $200 a pay, it goes right into that bank account. And then when rent day comes, boom, you e-transfer $800 to your landlord. Or, who says you have to pay your NWIN bill on the 20th of each month? Your NWIN bill is $100. Every paycheck, give NWIN $25. And the advantage is, you're going to have maybe a month where you don't have to make a payment because you've had a couple 5 paycheck months. And hey, great, I now have a payment holiday because I've overpaid my NWIN bill or union gas or whatever it might be. There's no kind of one size fits all for money management because everyone's different. Some people want to have, the app where they're keeping track of the pennies. Other people that's just too much. They only want to keep track of the big things. And it's okay. It's whatever budgeting method works for you, whatever money management method. And yeah, happy to help you out with that. And also, look at our website. Like I said, has some great spreadsheets. There's some great free apps. And we have really good YouTube videos as well that just kind of walk you through how to keep track of your expenses and then making sure that, okay, now my savings goals I can meet. And now my, fund goals I can meet, because you want to be able to save up money for, well, regardless of your age, you want to save up money for retirement. You also want to save up money for something fun, or heck, budget every month for Christmas. We all know when Christmas happens. So, look at whatever you normally spend, divide it by 12. Again, every paycheck, $5 goes in your Christmas account or your birthday account or whatever you might have. So that when that big expense happens, no big deal. I already have $1,000 saved up in my Christmas account. I have, 10 brothers and sisters to buy for. Boom, I'm done.
You were just born in the wrong family.
Not me personally, but no, I'm sure there's families out there that have 10 brothers and sisters.
A couple of other things that came to mind. One is that you've talked about all these resources that you have on your website, and that's tremendous. So before we're done the presentation tonight, I'm going to make sure that we get the website up on the screen for people to see, so that they know where to go to get to these resources. Earlier, you mentioned a secure credit card. I'm not familiar with that term. Can you explain to us what that means?
So essentially what it is, it's just a regular Visa, but what you do is you basically put down a security deposit. There's 2 main companies that do it, Capital One and Home Trust. Okay. So you can apply online, and then let's say you qualify for even a $200 credit card. You give them $200, you use that credit card, you pay it off, you now have that $200 limit again. And what you'll find, and what I found with a lot of my clients, is you do that for a while, 6 months, all of a sudden now they're giving you an unsecured credit card. So you have a two positive effects on your credit rating. Mm-hmm. And don't just wait for your credit card bill to come out. If you go to the gas station, put $50 of gas in and use your credit card. You get home, transfer $50 from your bank account onto your secured credit card, it's paid off.
I gotta laugh because I do know a few people, myself included, that do this, right?
Oh, I do it as well because I like credit card points, and I don't carry cash, so I'll put it on my credit card, go home, pay for it.
It didn't seem like that long ago that I was telling people, well, get a bunch of jars, right? Mm-hmm. And cash your paycheck and put the cash in the jars. And this jar is for food, and this jar is for this, and this jar is for that, right? And have all these jars. And I used to tell people, if you end up with an empty jar, then you have allocated what you had allocated towards that. If you want to spend more on that, you have to go rob from another jar, right? You need to have the cash. Well,
you're talking about the method that Gail Vax-Oxlade used on Till Death Do Us Part.
Perfect. Exactly. Right. So whether it's in jars or in envelopes or whatever it is, then COVID hits. Nobody wants to touch cash anymore. So maybe those days are gone now. But
well, and there's some banks that allow you to have multiple bank accounts without any charge. So you're basically using the envelope method. You're just doing it virtually.
yeah, I really like that idea. I do encourage people to save towards things, and they can be short-term things, but they can also be long-term things. I've often talked to people about saving for the next car, right? Instead of going and buying a car and paying interest on the loan all the way along, why don't you save up the money, buy cash, and then continue to save that money for the next car so that you get to pay cash again? And the answers that I have gotten sometimes are interesting, because they're like, well, no, you don't understand. I can't do that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you can make the payment plus interest, you should be able to make the payment minus the interest to your own bank account so that you can pay cash when the time comes. So I realize that there could be a transition there, trying to gear yourself in that direction. But I think it's great that you're giving this kind of education to people who and have resources for them to go check out and adopt into their lifestyle. Because, when I see people walking in for payday loans because can't, because
don't get me started on payday loans.
Oh, well, actually, that was one of the things I wanted to bring up. So now that I've scratched that itch, maybe you want to take off and have a little rant for a minute.
Well, my gosh, yeah, there's no reason someone should be going and getting what's the annualized rate, like 400% on a payday loan. $20 every 100 for 2 weeks. It might sound great, but it never works out that way. You go to payday lender A, take out the money. Payday comes. Well, okay, I don't have the money, so now I'm going to go to payday lender B. And all of a sudden, I saw a client 3 days ago who had, massive debt, maybe $20,000 in debt over 20 different payday lenders. And it's the most I've ever seen. I saw payday lenders I'd never heard of before that I'm having to research so I could put them into the database. And it comes down to, okay, why do you need this money? Okay, you're going to a payday lender and taking money out because your Visa bill is due. Sorry, Visa, but what's Visa going to do if you're a day late paying your bill because it's due on Thursday, you're paid on Friday? And most landlords are reasonable too. If you're a good tenant, you always pay on time. And it's like, you know what? Rent's due on the 1st. I don't get paid until the 3rd. I have half the rent now. Can I pay you rent on the 3rd? I really don't know any landlords that would say, no, I'm going to evict you now. And first of all, they can't evict you now anyway.
Right.
But, just be honest, make a plan. But the big thing is, if you tell your landlord they're going to get the rent on the 3rd, you give it to them on the 3rd, because good tenants are good tenants. They don't want to lose you either. So don't go to the payday lender and have this enormous interest rate that's just going to, be this huge burden on your back. Talk to the people that you owe the money to. NWIN has a great program too. And they said, just communicate with us. You can't pay your bill. Let us know. We'll put you on a budget program. And, just talk to us. But, if you tell us that you're going to pay us on the 20th and it's the 30th and we still don't have our money, well, then we're going to use the legislative methods that are available to us. But, be honest, talk to people you owe money to and work out that plan.
What I have heard, obviously I've not talked to you prior to this point in time, but what I have heard in the past from people, from creditors, is that the worst possible thing you can do is hide.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. If you're afraid to talk to people because you are afraid of the answers you're going to get to your inquiry, or the way that they're going to speak to you, or if you're afraid for whatever reason that just not answering the phone and not opening the mail is going to somehow make the problem go away, it's going to get far worse. Because if people don't think that you care, and that's what they get from your non-response, then you're right. Then they're going to go the legislative way, and then it gets ugly.
Yep.
So certainly if people are in this position, great now that they have somebody to talk to, because we'll put your information up on the screen and they can get in touch with you. Beyond that, we would definitely encourage people to be honest, be responsible. If somebody is got themselves in a position, it doesn't mean that they have to, feel like an imbecile, right? Somebody loses their job. I mean, that's COVID hits, like people are out of work. People's incomes have declined or just gone away. I mean, there's health issues. There's all kinds of circumstances that can bring people to this place. I'm so thrilled that we were able to have you on tonight, because I wanted people who viewed this to understand that they have somewhere to go. They have someone to talk to, right? So they're not completely sunk. I want to take opportunity to put this up on the screen. I'm not sure if this is relevant. If you wanted to point anything out here, I'll give you.
Well, it is interesting because it does kind of show that people aren't alone. I mean, what we do every year is we kind of compile all of the stats. And so last year, basically in the city, there were just over 1,000 insolvencies. But the interesting thing, again, it goes back to people thinking, well, it's just bankruptcies. And no, in the city, it was 63% of people filed proposals, which meant they had the income and they had some kind of assets. And what's interesting too is just the average amount of debt that the clients have is $51,000. So theoretically, you can file bankruptcy as long as you have 1,000 in debt. Practically, I mean, I've seen clients which have had 5,000 in debt. I've also had clients, I think the highest I'm at is just under $1 million. And the scary number is that debt to income ratio. For our stats purposes, that this does not include mortgages. So basically, if you're making $10,000 a year, it means you have $17,000 in debt. So it's a matter of, and it's kind of I guess the tail chasing the dog, because interest rates are so low for things like lines of credit. Temptation is there. I mean, credit cards are still, anywhere from 14 to 28%, but it's just a matter of kind of looking at it. And the one thing I really like, the legislation changed, I don't know, probably five or 6 years ago. Have you ever noticed, well, assuming you carry a balance on your credit card, when you look at your credit card statement now, it now says if you make the minimum payment, it will take X number of years to pay this debt off. And that was a huge eye-opener for people, because you look at it, and I'm looking at statements from clients, and it says it'll take you 150 years to pay this off. First of all, bank, why did you ever extend that kind of credit?
Right.
And I mean, no one is going to, literally no one is going to pay that off, because you're not going to live that long. So that was a real eye opener when you look at that and you think, okay, well, I can't be debt free on my own the next 5 years or 10 years. At that point, you realize, okay, I need to talk to someone. And even if it's a case where, you really don't need to do a bankruptcy or proposal, let's just kind of rejig your budget. Let's kind of reevaluate your priorities, and maybe you can work your way out of this on your own in a couple years. And if not, then it's a case of, maybe you do need to look at bankruptcy. Maybe you do need to look at proposals, because if you find, like you said, phone's ringing off the hook, well, I guess technically it's not a thing anymore, but your cell phone's going off all the time. You're always putting on a mute. You're always blocking numbers. Or, especially now, you're going to start getting court notices in again, or you already have a wage garnishee that's just waiting for you. That's when you really need to talk to someone and figure out, okay, what is my best plan? You can't sleep at night because you're stressed about your debt. There are far more things to be worried about right now than worrying about your debt. Let's figure out a plan. Let's figure out a plan to get you out of this and get you debt free.
Some of the statistics I've seen is that when you're talking to some of the millennials in Canada and ask them what they think a high mortgage interest rate would be to pay, a lot of them will answer 3.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to imagine that sometime in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years that interest rates aren't going to go, at least over 2%. And if you have a renewal at some point in time where your interest rate, goes from 2% to 3%, that could make a fair chunk of difference on those payments and what it's going to cost you to live. So anyway, we've only scratched the surface. There's so much that we could go into, but I really want to thank you for joining us, Rebecca. This was really insightful, and I hope that people will avail themselves of this information and the tools that are available. Kudos to you for what you do. You're giving people great advice and great information, and you're providing a valuable service to really get people back on a firm financial footing. So I gotta credit you. It's been wonderful having the conversation with you, and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And give us this information.
Glad we're able to connect, and I think it's important for people to know right now, because we're in stage 3. We're not meeting with clients in person. That's the great thing about technology. Our meetings are just held right now, email, phone, Zoom, whatever you prefer. Even if you decide you want to proceed, the government was good enough during all this to pass some emergency legislation. Everything's done electronically. There's software to sign electronically, so you don't have to worry you don't have to worry about coming out, because if you came to see us, we're Ottawa and Peary. Well, we're not really there. My colleagues and I, we're all at our respective homes and our respective basements with our computers and our phones. Still here to help people.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? There's so much more to this. Perhaps we'll give you a call and see if we can get you back sometime, and we can dig a little deeper and unpack some more. And, who knows what the next 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10 months, what's going to unravel here. It's a really interesting time in which we live.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again soon, and have a wonderful night. Take care, Rebecca.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Guess I'll borrow from my